Hi everybody, welcome to today's video. Obviously you know now what I'm actually making today because of the thumbnail, but these colours are what come in one of the Quilling kits, and as soon as I saw these colours it instantly reminded me of this character, so that's where the inspiration had come from for this particular project. So we're making Peppa Pig. Hopefully the background music will reflect the type of character that we're actually doing today. There's always a lot of joining of these papers. These are actually the longer version, but still there's quite a few that need to be stuck together. So in the video I won't be showing me sticking them all together, but basically you stick these pieces together as I show in the first bit, and then once they're all stuck together I can then quill it to as long as that allows me to do it, and then the rest I have to do by hand. I am looking at getting another machine. I'm looking to buy something that makes it a lot bigger than this, but this is what I've got for now, so this is how I'm making it work. So behind the scenes, as you can see in the box at the top of the screen, I'd done a couple of trial and errors. I had an idea of how big I wanted this, and to try and keep all these together into a shape and make it into a spherical shape for the head, I had to go away and make sure that as I was doing these, the papers weren't coming apart. So I got myself a bit of a template by doing the shapes that I'm going to do with these bright orange pieces that I'm not likely to use. I will use them in some projects, but it's nothing as popular as the other colours that I got in the kits. So here I'm just basically making two circles exactly the same size, gluing them both together so that I can start making the head from them two. With this being quite a new craft to me, I've not really took notice of how many of these pieces actually stick together, but there is quite a few. I'm sure there's something like 12 pieces before we actually get a length good enough to do the size of this head. In future videos I will count these and put these on the screen so that if you do want to follow along at all that you can do that. I'm also thinking of doing the rest of the family, so if you're interested in me doing the rest of the Peppa Pig family, please let me know. That's that bit done. Just pushing them down on a flat surface just to make sure that all the little bits of individual papers in the middle are actually flat, and then I go on doing exactly the same process where I join all these together, and this happens throughout the video. It's just something that's part and parcel of it, so that you can actually make the shapes that you want to make. So on this bit I'm moving on to making the snout. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen what a 3D Peppa Pig looks like. They look quite scary, yeah. The cartoon has two eyes on one side of the head, so obviously on the other side of the head you'd have the same. So it was quite difficult to make a 3D version of Peppa Pig, but you know, I managed it. There was quite a lot of trial and error, but I wanted to challenge myself a bit more. I'm moving on to her dress. I chose this colour, which was one that I had in mind of what kind of colour dress that she's wore from memory. I did the mistake again of not actually having a reference picture up at the beginning. I really need to get used to putting that on so that I can actually follow some kind of idea of what it looks like. You think me being an artist and using reference filters, I would have learnt my mistake from that, but I don't. So I managed to get a reference picture up after a bit, and the dress colour weren't too far apart. So now I'm just getting a size of what Peppa Pig's legs could work as. Her being a cartoon character, she has very, very thin legs, but I wanted this one to stand up so it didn't fall over, so I needed to make legs that would actually fit. So I go ahead and make the leg, and then obviously I need another 5 of these, so I've got 3 on each leg. Now just want to get the height right, so I just decided that 3 was the perfect size, and just want to make sure that they do actually fit on the circle so when I come to do it. Now, getting out this dome maker is what I've called it. It's basically something that forms circles, shapes, different ways of forming these quilling projects, and I've found what's the best thing to do is to start off with a smaller one, work it up to the bigger one, and then actually start moulding it around the actual shape over a period of time rather than going directly onto the big ones. I found when I was doing it just straight onto the bigger sizes, it wasn't forming the papers in the right way. It was sort of pushing things a lot further along than where it should do in certain parts and then not in others. So I found this is the best way to actually form these. So I'm getting the base of the dress done over the forms, these larger shaped ones where you actually have a flat top. I think that was really a perfect shape for this dress, so I'm glad I used the form. And now just pushing down on the top to make the top of it flat so that when they come to attach the head, that goes on there nice and smooth. So here you see me forming the head. So this needs to be done in 2 halves to make a spherical shape, and it does take a lot of toing and froing from different sizes of these so you can actually get the gaps on the papers the right width so that they don't all clump together. I'm sure my technique will get better over time the more I practice this, but this is the first time, apart from the templates, I actually give this a go. But it's basically going over the small ones, just flatten it down, take it to the next size, flatten it down, take it to the next size, flatten it down, and eventually you come up with 2 sides that you can stick together. So this is the first half, and when I've done this half and the other one and join them together, you then go over the seam with another quill paper so that you can actually start looking like a spherical shape. So I'm just making sure that I'm happy with the size and the shape of how this is going to look. And again, just flattening that down on the table so that I get a nice flat edge. A few minor adjustments and there we have it, we have a snout. So as I go along I just check my work that I'm happy with it, so I'm just putting these 2 halves together and just being sure that I'm happy with the size and the shape of this snout on the head. It's difficult to get the shape of the snout on the head for the Peppa Pig because of the way it's actually drawn in the cartoon, but I've done this as close as I could do. Now moving on to the ears, I take 1 piece of quilling paper and then split that into 2, so I've got 2 exactly the same length pieces of paper, and then I'm going to put it on the machine and just quill that into shape. Taking this over now to the board, I put it in the teardrop shape because I thought that was the closest kind of shape to a pig's ear. So yeah, I just basically put it in there and then get the sizing correct and then make sure it's pinched at the end so it resembles an ear. Gluing that in place, and then I can start doing exactly the same thing on the opposite ear, so that I know that I've got two the same size ears that can stick on a pretty head. So next I'm moving on to the bottom of the dress. I needed to attach the legs to something, and now that I've made the dress into a cone shape, there's nothing to actually stick the legs to. So I decided to go ahead and make exactly the same size dress piece at the bottom so that I could stick the legs to the base. Whilst doing this, I figured there's another option that could be possible. Inside the dress is hollow, so you could put like a little note inside or a little keepsake inside if you was to give it to somebody, you know, as a gift. And if you make the bottom of the dress slightly smaller than the actual dress itself, you'll be able to slide that in and out and take it out by pulling the legs down, revealing the little secret message inside. I decided not to go ahead this time and do that, so I'm basically putting the glue inside so this actually sets the shape, using a precision nozzle just because I've already got it into this bottle. But I use a Q-tip just to spread that round, just so it gets all of the pieces of paper so that it doesn't actually slide about once it's formed. Setting that to one side, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the rest of the pieces that I've already made. Now I'm on to gluing the legs together, basically just getting each shape and putting a layer of glue onto the bottom of each one and then sticking the top one. Building that up to 3 layers so that it's got exactly the same height on both sides. Just takes a little minute for it to stick into place. Once it's held there, the glue dries pretty quick. I'm quite pleased and happy with how this glue works for this type of craft. leg done. Right, need to make another one. I'll speed this up for you. So as I said before, I wasn't planning on making this into a keepsake kind of area for in the side of the skirt. So I'm just building that layer up so it matches the same size as the bottom of the dress that I made. Happy with the size of that, and now moving on to the head. So I need to glue these two pieces together, and this is where the precision nozzle comes in. You can get a really nice thin layer across this in normal circumstances, but at this point my hands were getting pretty tired. This glue does dry clear, but I always like to make sure there's no actual bits of glue stuck on the outside. So sticking them two pieces together. Just need to hold it in place for a couple of seconds once it's in position. Give it a quick minute to sort of stick and adhere to each other. And then once it's sort of gone a bit tacky, you can sort of leave it then to dry. The seam I'm covering up with another piece of quilling paper. That's how you make the shape look spherical, because obviously as you look at it now, it looks kind of eclipse kind of shape, you know, like an oval. But putting that piece over the top will actually join the pieces together. What you'll notice on this part is that I'm actually putting some glue down, then using an earbud, cotton bud, Q-tip, whatever you want to call them from whichever part of the world you're in, just basically to spread this across. What this stops it doing is becoming loose, or stops it from sort of spiraling, or the paper's coming loose away from the actual shape. And as this layer builds, that then makes this oval kind of shape looks more spherical. So that's the head shape done. The seam has covered that quite nicely, so I'm just putting that to one side so that it can start to dry. I'm just going to go over this disc with some glue so that it can dry hard, and that way it doesn't spiral once it's at the bottom. If somebody pushes it from the bottom, or if it's too heavy on the weight of the legs, then at least it's got a bit of support so that it doesn't come undone. that to one side so it can dry off. So now we're just going ahead and putting a bead of this glue around the fine edge of the bottom of the dress so that I can attach the disc so that it has a bottom for us to attach the legs to. Going around the edge of the dress because I did get some glue on the outside. Like I said before, it doesn't really matter with this glue because it does dry clear. I definitely don't want any build up of glue. It's good just to spread it around, and that way you also make sure that you're not missing any parts. Making sure that's exactly where I want it, and then just holding it in place until it actually sticks. Then I'm happy to leave it there to dry. Then I'm doing the same process with the snout. I'm just putting a thin bead around, ready for that to be attached to the head. Holding that in place for a few seconds just so it starts getting a bit tacky, and then we're okay to leave that over to the side. So now I'm going ahead and gluing the legs that we made earlier. There's 3 in total, and it's just a matter of putting some glue on and putting them in place, just making sure that they're in line at least, so that when she comes to stand up, she can stand up on her own 2 feet. There's one. And there's 2. Just setting that aside to dry. Next we're looking at getting the ears put in place, trying to find the perfect position to stick them on. Yep, quite happy with that. Looking quite good. Okay, this is where my creative skills come in, because forming the arms for Peppa Pig was a bit of a nightmare. I come up with several different designs. I tried the cone kind of shape that I did on the minion on the previous video. Yeah, I'll leave a card up at the top there for you to check that one out. But this one, because it had 3 kind of fingers or 3 parts of the arms, I needed to make a shape where it would still be stiff enough for it to keep up shape and also not to fall off the body very easily. So I needed to build up some layers. So what I decided to do was just basically get hold of one of the pieces of quilling paper and then fold it over and over and over again, forming the shape of an arm. And then towards the end of it, I go over with the glue and keep it in place to form an extra digit, and then the same on the opposite side to form a digit as well. I just take it over to the body just to make sure it is actually the height that I want it, so it actually fits the body shape. Then over to the face. This took a while for me to do just because it was so fiddly, so I didn't do it on the camera, but basically just made a mouth shape, a smile shape out of some red quilling paper, stuck that on in the middle, let that set for a bit so that I could stick the other ends up once it's actually dried. Then also went ahead and started making some eyes. I had to cut some of this paper in half, which is why you've got the ruler on the screen there. Again, a very fiddly process that took me a long while to actually do, but eventually I got 2 very thin pieces of black, 2 very thin pieces of white, and then I just needed to make sure that they was both the exact same size. Chopping them off, and then after gluing them together, and then I will start rolling them to form an eye. When I was doing this I thought it looked a bit weird, so I then went ahead after a while, because there was just white straight onto the head. It looked a bit weird, so I then went over them in pink so it actually matched the head as well. So I just put in a couple of layers of that pink around there. Again, took me quite a while to do this, but I've ordered some new papers so that I can do some thinner, smaller sizes. So just making sure I've got exactly the same length on both eyes, again, so they don't end up different sizes, and gluing that down and getting it ready to stick on the head. So I've got 2 eyes there ready to go on. I also go ahead and make 2 very small swirls which I will use for the cheeks. I did these off camera because I forgot to press record. But yeah, that's what I'm attaching at this moment. You can't see it from this angle very well. I didn't for some reason press record on my overhead camera. But I'm just basically putting the swirls on the side of the cheeks. Peppa Pig has rosy cheeks, so I thought that would be a nice little addition. I weren't sure whether to do 3D with this, but after doing it I'm quite happy with the result. And now I'm just going ahead and sticking the eyes on. Making sure they're evenly lined up on the head, and then once I'm happy with where they are, I let it set to dry. And that's the result, that's the head as it is. Now, moving on to making the shoes. The last 3D shape that I did, the minion, I wanted to keep it quite simple and basic because it was the first time doing a 3D model. But I just wanted to push this a little bit further with this one, just to get some ideas of how we can actually form some shoe shapes. So I'm using the same size circle as I did for the legs because I want the same circumference. And instead of using a tight roll, I do it so there is a loose roll, so there's actually gaps in between, so you can actually move the shape a lot easier. So it gives me more options to actually form the shape of the shoe. So we've got 2 feet, we need 2 shoes, so I'm just going ahead and doing exactly the same process as the first, just making sure I've got them exactly the same size, which is why I use this cork board, because there's 4 holes of the same diameter across. So just making sure they both fit in and that the spaces are correct and even, so that when I glue it up they both look pretty much identical, so I can form the same shape on each side. them into place, and I'm going to leave them over one side to dry whilst I move on to the arms. The arms are now dried and I want to position them on the body. I've got quite a decent amount of paper to actually stick to the body now, but I still want to just bend it that little bit so that I've got a better grip on it. So just attaching some of the glue on there and making sure I put it in the right place, holding it in place just till it starts getting a bit tacky, and then it's a matter of leaving it to dry. So we'll get some glue on that second arm, and I just want to make sure that it's symmetrical on the body, and then once it's on in place I can just leave that to dry. Happy with that? Right, let's move back on to the shoes. So like I said before, I used the same diameter circle as I used for the actual leg, which made it a lot easier to manipulate the shape around the actual base of the leg. So I'm just basically manipulating the paper to make sure that fits. Finish faffing around and just making small tweaks and small changes just to make sure I'm happy with the shape. I put them up against the legs and I'm quite happy with how they look. I give it quite a, not a pointy shoe, but you know, a rounded pointy shoe, and I thought it worked quite well. I attached these to the front of the legs, but obviously we've got them on the front, we also need a back strap for those. So then I just cut some pieces of quilling paper in black and stuck them to the back of the base of the legs, so that when I stick the shoes on the front they all match and look like one thing, until you turn her upside down and then she doesn't look like she's got any shoes on. But for the most part this model is going to be stood up, so you won't see the bottom of the shoes. These are the times when these tweezers really do come in handy. This is part of the Cricut set that I got a while back, but you can buy these online. So I found when doing really fiddly bits like this, and it's best to just glue the middle bit on first, let that dry off, and then go in and put some glue in on the ends just to secure it in place. And then I want to just measure that the shoes are going to fit around the side, and then we can get them glued on. Like I said, looks a bit strange from underneath, but once she's stood up it does look like she's got a full shoe on. I'm just going in here with the fine point needle and just moving the quills apart just so that they're evenly spaced out so that the shoes both match on each side. Yep, quite happy with how that's turning out. Let's move on to the head. I decided, because there's like a circle shape and it's going onto something flat, that it'd be a good idea to use a toothpick or a cocktail stick to make a hole in the head and then dig it into the body. Inside the head is hollow and pretty much like mine, but the head's hollow and so is the body, so it will go inside only to a certain point. So it's just a matter of making sure we've got the right measurement for the head to actually sit on top of the body. And obviously this also meant that the head can actually turn as well. If you're doing this obviously for a child, then I would look at maybe just gluing it straight on and maybe use a bit extra glue than what you need to. But this isn't for a child, this is just one of the little projects that I like doing that I'm gifting to somebody who is actually an adult. But yeah, head's on there and I'm quite happy with how that turned out. Then we're turning over onto the back and I just made a little tail, quite simple, just stuck that on there, just make sure it's nice and secure. I was going to do one that sort of quills off, like it goes into like a curly whirly tail, but I knew that would fall off over time. So there she is in all her glory. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that it's brought a little bit of pleasure to your lives. These type of videos do take quite a long time for me to do, so I really would appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff for me, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!